Hey everyone, I've just been studying John Williams' orchestration from Harry Potter. As you can see, I've got this kind of colourful whiteboard in front of me on the computer. This is an attempt to try to understand the layers that go into each of the sections of this theme from Harry Potter, Harry's Wondrous World. It's a theme that everyone knows and loves called Friendship Theme, and it's characterised by its kind of warm, safe, wonderful feeling. So what I'm going to do is go through this whiteboard from this section. It goes for about 10 seconds, this piece of music. I'll play the music and then I'm going to break down some of the layers and how it's orchestrated through this section to try and make some sense of it. I mean, John Williams is already complicated. As you can see, this is the sheet music. From first glance, it's hard to know really what's going on, but putting it into a whiteboard like this, using a bit of color and categorizing it, we can kind of try to understand some of the common layers and the common tricks that John Williams uses. So here is the section from Harry's Wondrous World. I'll play it through and then let's try and explain what's going on. Alright, so that's it. And this whiteboard explains what's going on. So first of all, I better just explain what we're actually looking at. So each phrase of the melody has a different box, which means each phrase of the melody has a slightly different orchestration with slightly different layers. And John Williams seems to do this a lot. So the entirety of a melodic phrase has the same orchestration. As soon as the phrase changes in the melody, that produces an opportunity to change the layers and the texture. And I think that creates some of the magic of John Williams is every single phrase, it's very common, every few seconds, the texture and the orchestration evolves, creating this kind of magical, larger-than-life feel. So now that we know there's three parts of this melody and three different textures, let's actually explain what's going on. So in each of these, I have these colored blocks indicate the layers of the orchestration. So here's a piano for pitch reference. The yellow layer, which sits on top of the piano here, shows us the layer which is the melody. And then underneath, these are the four layers that make up the harmony. This is just looking at phrase one. So if we start with melody, this is the yellow box. We can see that this circle, this means that the melody is playing from here, about middle C, to about E above the octave above middle C, so about a tenth. And this is characterized mainly, the melody is just violas, violin twos and violin one, so all the high strings are coming together in unison playing this line. They're all playing in a comfortable range as well, which gives this warm, safe feeling that comes with, friendship theme. My ears find it really hard to hear, but this melody is also coloured with some woodwinds, so clarinets and English horns, and bassoons an octave below. So these are really hard to hear in the recording, but they just add a little bit of colour. The main thing about this section, this melody, is the high strings. They all play together in a comfortable range. Below you can see in the harmony, we have four layers. So in the orchestration it looks really complicated, but in reality there's only really four things going on in the harmony. And in the recording, it's hard to even separate these. They all blend together, but I'm just going to try and explain what's going on. So above the melody, you can see that this circle indicates that there's arpeggios in the flutes that are playing in the pitch range and kind of decorates the pitches above the melody. Then we have three layers that sit below the melody. There is cellos playing arpeggios across 2 octaves under middle C. Then this light blue layer is sustains, so we've got tubas, bass trombones, and 2 tenor trombones. So John Williams uses this a lot. This is like a low brass chord. And this voices a 4-voice chord in the same range as the cello arpeggios, these 2 octaves below middle C, sitting under the melody. And then this orange layer is the bass line, which double basses take this as well. And this bass line happens to about 2 octaves below middle C as well, around at the bottom of the range of the cello arpeggios and the bottom of these sustains as well. So visually, these are the 5 layers that are going on in this phrase. Underneath, I've got the sheet music for each of these as well. I won't go into this in too much detail because I just want to see conceptually what's going on with each of the layers. But here you can see the melody in octaves, the flute arpeggiated patterns. This is a staccato triplet kind of thing, decorating the sound. The cello arpeggios are playing triplets, and these are all just chord tones. Low brass sustains look like this, voiced in 4 voices, and these are all chord tones as well in that same range as cellos. And then we got the pizzicato bass line, which plays these notes, and these happen to line up with the same notes as the tubas at the bottom of the bass, the low brass sustains, and the lowest notes of the cello arpeggios as well. So phrase 2, let's play it through, and then I'll explain how the texture evolves, and if it sounds like it evolves at all. So let's go back. I'll play from phrase 1. It's phrase 1. Alright. So from first listen, it sounds almost identical. And it almost is. Here you can see from this map, 5 layers in phrase 1, 5 layers in phrase 2. And they're the same layers as well. So the melody stays the exact same, the same instruments. This layer that was playing flute arpeggios, this layer has evolved a little bit, and it's now added clarinets and oboes. It's really, really subtle. It's really hard to hear in the mix, but that is the only change that really happens in the texture. Then the cello arpeggios continue, the low brass chords continue, and the double bass line continues as well. So if we look at the sheet music, this is what the melody looks like. Now the high wind pattern has evolved just slightly, a really subtle change just because the phrase has changed. John Williams wants to create just the subtlest, slightest little differences. Instead of these staccato kind of patterns in flutes, now the clarinets and oboes join, and now it's more of a legato line. So these are dovetailing, so this bottom line is played by clarinets, and then this top line, as it gets to the higher pitches, is played by oboes and flutes. The cello arpeggios have actually slightly varied as well. So from triplets, now just playing regular eighth notes. Again, this is really hard to hear in the recording, but it's interesting to see that John Williams wants to slightly vary some of the layers, phrase to phrase. The low brass sustains are the exact same, and same as the pizzicato bass line. So from phrase 1 to phrase 2, we basically keep the same texture, but with some really subtle details changing. And then finally we have phrase 3, which goes like this. This is phrase 2. Now 3. And as you can hear, this phrase sounds a little bit different from the others. Now it's really just about the melody. So here, if you look at these boxes, the pink boxes don't carry over anymore. So some of the complexity in the arpeggios, they stop after phrase 2. And the biggest change is you can see this melody layer now has added cellos, bass trombones, and horns. So some really powerful instruments to state the melody, so the melody is even bigger, and we end this melody, the last phrase, with a really big statement. So here, that top line that we had high strings coloured with some woodwinds, we now add a French horn, which adds a bit of power. And then we also add cellos, French horns, the rest of the French horns, and bass trombones, which play thirds below the bottom octave of this melody as well, which richens things up, and we really feel this melody at this point. So the big change is this phrase is all about this layer, the melody layer, getting really stacked and growing from the previous section. Underneath you can see 3 layers in the texture, so the texture and the harmony simplifies quite a bit because we really want to focus more on the melody becoming something larger. So here we have runs, and the dotted line means these are episodic. These don't play throughout the entire phrase. These are in woodwinds and pianos, and 3 octaves, so this really big 3-octave run around this range. The sustain chords do carry over, however these kind of half in players as 2 tenor trombones continue the sustains, However, we lost the bass trombone because it moved to the melody to strengthen the melody. And the tuba sits out most of this melody and joins the double basses on the bass line, but just towards the end of this phrase. So, in summary, this phrase is all about the melody and it evolves, and the harmony and the texture simplifies a lot. So this is what this looks like. We have the melody now in these 3 lines, the melody in octaves, and also this thirds below. The win runs, they wait till the end of the phrase to end on a big high. This is what that looks like in 3 octaves. The sustains, similar to before, however now it's just the 2 voices in tenor trombones. And then we have this bottom line, which is the bass line. Tubas now join the double basses. They don't play in the first bar, but they just play in the end of the phrase in the second bar, just to emphasize that big bass to end the phrase in the section, leading on to the next part of the piece. So that is my attempt to understand what's going on in the orchestration from John Williams in this friendship theme. Hopefully this makes sense to anybody watching. If not, doesn't really matter because this is more just for me to understand. I'm going to study some of these orchestrations and then just dump them on YouTube as somewhere to keep them for myself, but maybe you'll find it interesting as well. So I think I'll do another one of these, another section from Harry Potter, maybe E.T., and sometime in the near future I might chuck this up on YouTube as well. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.